is first and foremost, some of you know the story, but I've lived my life in this area, in this space of two abrupt times when my everything changed overnight. And I believe it can relate to a lot of us because a couple years ago with COVID and life and just things changing without our control, without our asking, without our opinion, we just had to deal with it. And the more that I've learned in my story and the narrative of my life, that throughout your life, my life, our life, because truthfully what I always say, I mean your story, my story, it's the story. It's the story of people trying to navigate life with goals and aspirations and trying to figure out purpose and our future. But we got to navigate all these elements that we can't control, the people around us, the opinions that people have, the decisions that other people make that affect us as a collective whole. We have to navigate the internal processes of emotions and feelings and how we operate and deal with adversity and challenges. Like life is a compositive of just so many factors. And honestly, it can be exhausting, it can be exasperating, it can wear us out, it can be truthfully get us to a place that if we allow things to live rent-free in our head, it can paralyze us. But I've learned in my journey that I can't control what you say to me or how you treat me or what you do. I've learned even more recently, you can't always control even some of the mechanisms of life and how things go about and societal things because things can change overnight. But what I've learned to control is what I can control is how I react, how I respond in what I do. I've learned to control the controllables. And truthfully, it's helped me tremendously navigate when life and challenges and unforeseen circumstances that are around the corner come knocking on my door. And even though I don't want to deal with them, I don't want to have to face them, I can't really avoid them because they're there. And so when COVID happened and the world kind of changed overnight for me in my sphere, in my circle, in my space, in the community that I was living life with, I had to really begin to think like, how and what am I going to do moving forward? Because every single one of us, unique to you, first and foremost, you're a one of one. And what I mean by that your fingertips, your fingerprints are unique to you. If you touch something, truthfully, you can be identified as you. No other person, that you are so unique that even your fingerprints tell you that you are a one of one. So first and foremost, if you ever think that you are minuscule in this world, or that you don't have purpose or value, or that you're not unique, no, you very much specifically are. You are a one of one. And truthfully, when you become a one of one in a collective whole, man, we become a very unique, powerful group of people that can really face and endure and achieve and to navigate anything. What I always like to say is that inside the very DNA of who you are, the very fiber of the bones and the breath and the blood and the organs and the tissues, like your life, like inside of you is resolve and tenacity and perseverance and the ability to be a problem solver and a critical thinker. Like we as humanity, since the course of whenever we came into existence on this earth, this planet, we as people have figured things out. And we haven't always been perfect in it. But the thing that activates you and me, the thing that's the ignition switch that triggers you and me to have resiliency and perseverance and resolve, it's the fact that we are a people that can communicate and have human connection. That truthfully, that you and I and we are never going to be and never will be an island. We can't do this on our own. We are better together because I or you can we see our blind spots. And when we get to a place of getting beyond the surface of the transaction and above and beyond the surface of this very superficial relationship thing, truthfully, you can be in a room, but you don't have to be present. You can be involved in community, but not be actively invested and involved in the community. You can go through life on the surface and glide and gleam, but truthfully never have any roots. And when storms and adversity and waves come crashing against us, that if we are just surface and superficial and around people but not invested intentionally, those storms can take us and carry us anyway and everywhere we can. I've really struggled, and I'm really open and honest with the title of social distancing. I understand that we need to be physically distant, man, but we got to stay socially connected because we're better together. And so for me, when COVID happened and my world changed overnight, I was able to draw from two pools of my life. The first time my world changed overnight was when my dad abandoned me when I was 12 years old. I felt like the rug got ripped out from underneath me. What I thought was up became down. The one that I looked up to, the one I valued, he was removed from my life. And it came with that was bitterness and frustration. And I didn't realize at that time that pressure can bust pipes, but pressure can also refine diamonds. To be honest, y'all, 19, 20, and 21, and 22, the journey of your life, your high school journey so far, and I know those last 2 years, like the adversity that you, not your neighbor, but you've had to navigate, it probably won't be the most difficult thing that you've ever going to have to face in the future. For the most of us, it won't be. There will be another mountain, another hurdle, another storm, another struggle. But what I've learned in my journey is that even though pressure is always going to be around me, it's always going to be prevalent, it's always going to be knocking on the door, pressure, if I allow it, if I avoid it, if I'm not willing to face it and have risk and dive in and to refuse to allow it to destroy, see, pressure can bust pipes, but pressure can refine diamonds. I've learned pressure's not the problem. It's always going to be there. It's what will I do? How I react and how will I respond in the middle of my unique pressure storm. And so when my dad abandoned me, what I felt like when I was a kid, and I went to a default setting of surface and superficial and the fake smile and acting like everything was okay. And well before we were wearing physical masks, I was wearing the social and the emotional mask. You know, the one that kept everybody at an arm's reach distance. Because my trust had been broken. And I decided that I was never going to allow anybody ever to make me feel that way ever again. So I began to determine my trust factor on feelings. But the problem is, feelings can and will lie to me. They're not always based in the facts. Feelings are authentic when you feel angry, mad, frustrated, disappointed, hurt, wounded, sad, happy, joyful, excited. The feeling is always valid. It's really how you feel. But it doesn't always mean that it's based in facts. I always talk about the story my freshman year when there was a soccer game the night before, and truthfully, I had terrible self-esteem, self-worth, and self-value when I was a young kid. Because of my parents and the divorce that happened when I was in the 5th grade and my isolation, not letting anybody step into my space, and I was very surface, and I refused to find the courage to let anybody get close because I didn't want anybody to ever make me feel that way again. It really stimulated in a lot of destructive behaviors. It came with the mental health things of suicidal thoughts and self-injury and self-harm. It came with the anger and the rage of hurting people. I was angry and I would step on people and was verbally abusive and try to take my worth and take my value. It got involved with the substance abuse, the drugs, and the alcohol. To me, all of those are the symptoms of the real cold, the real hurt, the real pain, the real wound, is the fact that I was wounded, but I didn't have or know or want to face the courage of opening up to people because I didn't trust any of you. And so there was this time, my freshman year, that the soccer game was going on the night before, and I used to play soccer when I was in middle school, but I wasn't playing in high school. And as I walked by, I caught the glimpse of these two students, right, two soccer players, kind of the stars of the team at the time, and they were laughing and joking, and we made eye contact. And because of my inadequacy and my worth and my value and my personal reflection of how I saw my life, I just knew that they were talking about me. Like, the feeling was real. I felt hurt and wounded and embarrassed because they were rolling, man, and clowning. And I just knew, because we locked eyes, that conversation was about me. And the feeling was valid. But when I began to figure out the real conversation, what was being spoken about, the night before at the game, our team was terrible that year. And the team that they were playing were phenomenal. And the team that they were playing scored an own goal, which caused them to lose. And our team, which was terrible, won. And they were talking about that conversation. But even though I felt like they were talking about me and the feeling was super valid and more real than the breath that I'm breathing, it wasn't based in facts. And so I've had to get to a place when I realize that, man, when life and challenges and storms get activated and I'm around them, like, I can't allow my feelings to be driven by, and my trust to be driven by my emotions and how I feel. Because trusting people isn't a decision based on feelings. It's based on people's actions and how they treat me and how they've lived their life. And that they've been there consistency. And even though I don't always feel good because maybe they have hurt me or they have disappointed me, that doesn't disqualify people from me trusting them. And why trusting people is so important is because unless you have a layer of trust, of intentional risk, of being vulnerable with the people around you, it's that place that activates that thing called communication, where you can begin to talk and to process and to think. And that's where resiliency and resolve and tenacity is born. And so for many of years, the first time my world changed overnight, I went to wearing the social, the emotional, the fake face, the fake smile mask, not letting anybody in. And ultimately, that lifestyle led to a lot of destructive behaviors, hurts and pains and wounds. I allowed that pressure to begin to bust the pipe because I wouldn't face the very thing that I was really the most afraid of, which was me. But then later on in my life, after this picture that you see on the left, as my life was spiraling and snowballing out of control because of my unwillingness to allow anybody into my space and my fear of facing uncomfortable memories and moments and keeping everybody at an arm's reach distance, that's where the mental health, the self-injury, the eating disorders, the anger, the drugs, the alcohol, all these things developed. And this was my life at 18 years old. And it was here from 18 to 23, I went from being like a straight A student, thriving in academics and sports when I was younger, but slowly my world fell apart because I wouldn't use the tools that really were around us, and that's you and me together. And at 23, at July 17, 2009, when I was just kind of hurt and in pain and my life had fallen apart and I had been kicked out of school and literally I felt like there was so much hopelessness, and I allowed the pressure to bust the pipe, my wreck happened. And on July 17th, 2009, my friend Priscilla Owens, we went out partying that night because I was getting caught up with drugs and alcohol, and substance abuse became my coping mechanism. It became my counterfeit connection, like I like to call it. See, a lot of us have these counterfeit connections. We keep everybody on the surface, and I don't know if I even brought it over. I think I left it over there, but I have this little wad of money because too many of us right now, we live a very transactional lifestyle. And what I mean by that, it's like when I walk into the gas station in the morning to get my coffee, I give them a couple dollars, they give me a coffee, there's a transaction. It's very quick, it's very surface. I get what I think that I need and I want, and I'm on my way. And too often we live in a culture right now that everything is transactional, not even in the things that we possess and have, but on our feelings and our emotions and how we treat each other. And we jump on our social medias and we get that quick little impulse of that like or that follow or that viral video or letting everybody else's highlights live through our life. Like, we have allowed transactional living to invade every area of our life. And so for me, the substance abuse became the counterfeit connection. Like I could do community, right? Like I was able to find pockets and groups of people that shared in the common habit that honestly the drugs and the alcohol made the hurts and the pains kind of go away. It was a mask, but it never got to the root of the problem. So it gave me a sense of community, but I never had to really have any risk because I didn't have to let any of you in because I just shared popping the pill and taking the drink. I never had to open up about the hurts and the pains of my past. And a lot of us, we live in this surface transactional place that you're in a room or you're around pockets and groups and crowds and cliques of people, but you've never really allowed those people to lock arms with you because we don't trust. And that involves risk. And so too many times when challenges and storms and adversity come knocking on the door, we don't have any anchors, we don't have any people, we don't have any deep, meaningful relationships. And so we haven't developed the tools where resiliency and perseverance is born because that comes in community. And so when my wreck happened that night, and again, my world changed overnight, and Priscilla passed away because of my stupidity and my poor choices and my inability to realize that when I began to isolate way back when, and I began to develop these mechanisms of trusting based off feelings, that eventually it would snowball to a place where the substance abuse got me into doing decisions and actions and things that I never would have normally naturally have done. My dad was an alcoholic and a drug addict. Like I had told myself I was never going to be like him. And when the wreck happened, and I realized that my choices didn't only now affect me, but they affect the greater whole around me. And man, it was only by just the grace and honestly an act of kindness and compassion from this family who didn't know me, who stepped into a place of risk on their own. And they said, Nathan, in the middle of all of this, we're angry, we're mad, we're sad, we're frustrated, we're in pain, we're hurt, we don't know what we feel, but we've decided to pick love over hate. We decided to forgive. And we don't even know what that looks like, and it's probably going to be extremely uncomfortable, but we're asking you to do two things, and that's not to let our daughter pass away for nothing. Again, my world changed overnight. I didn't ask for it. Yes, I had skin in the game because I made decisions and I made choices that had the cause and effect. And even though the family forgave me, which is mind-blowing, the state of Indiana didn't, because choices have consequences. And so at 23 years old, yet again, my world changed overnight. But this time I began to realize that how I had been living my life wasn't working, and that I was allowing the pressure to bust pipes. And so what did I need to begin to do to allow the pressure around me to create the diamond and the value and that thing that had resolve and that was steadfast and that could withstand pressure and weight and fire? Like diamonds are hard and resolve. I remember a quote from my father when I was a kid, and even though I was really bitter and angry and mad at him for so many years of my life, when I was that young kid and I used to play basketball and he never would let me make a bucket, he would beat the brakes off of me. He never let me win a game ever when I was a kid, never, not one time. But he would always tell me, Nathan, life will always bring challenges and adversity and difficulties into your life. I'm not giving you a bucket. I need you to learn to identify the problem, look at the problem, and solve the problem, because giving up won't be in your mouth. And he had a quote that he stood on that he didn't even realize how important it was to me when I heard it, but it carried me through. And he used to always say this to me: as long as there's breath in your lungs, there's hope in your heart. As long as you're breathing, yes, you can. And so here I was at 23, incarcerated, getting sentenced to 15 years in prison. And my world changed overnight. Talk about pressure and adversity and struggles. And I began to realize how I had dealt with the pressure and the adversity when I was a kid apparently wasn't working. How did I know? I was in prison. And actually even now had a bigger ramification because it affected a greater group of people. It wasn't just me. There was the Owens family and my family and real people, because my choices don't only affect me, but we are a collective whole. And so this time, I was going to keep a promise to the Owens family, and I wrote the words, "Change the world," and I slapped it and I put it on the mirror. And I didn't know what that meant, but I began to really believe that I was done running from the adversity and the uncomfortability, and I was going to begin to lean into life and not be afraid of feeling. You know why a lot of us struggle? Because we're afraid of feeling uncomfortable. It's easy to say on the surface and to say superficial. And a lot of us are in this room that probably have behaviors and attitudes and decisions and things in our life that we know we should change, we want to change, we need to change, but truthfully, nothing ever changes. Why? Because change is extremely uncomfortable. And so even though we know there's behaviors and attitudes and things in certain situations that we need to face and address and not allow the fear to paralyze us, we run back to being what we've been. And even though some of these places that we stay are unhealthy, they're not satisfying, they're kind of detrimental, they know they're not good for our mental and emotional and our physical, like our psyche and life, we're willing to be here. And even though it's not great for us, it's comfortable because it feels safe. But this time, I was done running from pressure. And I remember my father used to say, Nathan, you're not a product of your environment. You'll always be a product of what you do in the middle of your storm. And every single one of you here at this school come from different walks of life, different statuses, different places, different situations. But your storm is your storm. It's not greater, it's not least than anybody else's. It's your storm, it's your pressure, it's your struggle, it's your reality. And so the challenge then begins to happen is, what will we do in the middle of your space, in your sphere? Because you're not a product of your environment. You're going to be a product of what you do. What you do is what you really, genuinely believe. And so for me in that moment, in that place, I began to face my fears. I developed those things that I call the five habits of my heart and of my mind, of transparency and accountability and hard work and good choices and valuing people. Transparency, accountability, hard work, good choices, and valuing people. I realized transparency was this: living a life that's kind of see-through, where I begin to have the risk and the vulnerability of trusting people, even though I felt like I couldn't, because I had learned that feelings aren't the determining factor of trust, that the determining factor of trust are those people that are consistency in my life, encouraging me, believing in me, having a track record of history saying, I want to see you win. And even though they maybe have disappointed me at times or let me down or said an ill word at one point in time, that doesn't disqualify them from being in my space. So I had to start being vulnerable and being real and being honest and being transparent and doing it afraid. And that place of transparency created this group of community that wasn't transactional, but I had real depth because they understood the fabric of the heart and of the wounds and of the pains. And truthfully, what began to happen is they began to also share, because real always bursts real. Real and vulnerability always stimulates more real and vulnerability. And I got to a place as I started having the courage, they started having the courage, and I began to look around me and I began to understand that every single person on this planet is beautifully broken some way, somehow. We've all got stuff. And the more that I found the courage to open up, it wasn't that my friend had to have the epiphanies and to solve all the world problems. They were listening, because you and me, when we find the courage to communicate the struggle, it activates problem solving. It's inside of your DNA. You're flipping phenomenal. You're a one of one. You are, man. And when I got to the place of doing it afraid, it created a real community that wasn't surface. And you know what? That doesn't mean that you always have to be physically connected, but it's being socially and emotionally invested in each other's lives. And that stimulated this place called accountability. And accountability is this: It's not that they're there to tell me when I'm right and when I'm wrong. They can help me, they can encourage me, they can give me advice and mentor. But really, accountability is this. It's those people that when I lock arms with, they can't make me be better, they can't make me be worse, but they can hold me like an anchor. Because emotions come and go like waves and clouds in the sea, crashing against the rocks, and the wind of the storms blowing those waves, those clouds all over the area. Emotions come and they go. But when I surrounded myself with these people, it began to activate something inside of me. And there's never been more of a time right now in 2021 and 2022 and where you guys are at as you're about to, some of you graduate and go into the next chapter of your life. And some of you as juniors are beginning to really have to begin to process what's next. Your world's going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. There's no stopping it, like it, love it, or leave it. You went from the goldfish to the little goldfish bowl, to the pond, to the lake, and now you're about to enter into an ocean of life. And to be honest, the Calvary isn't going to come. Our parents, our mentors, the teachers, the coaches, the respected leaders in our community, they're all navigating uncharted territories just like you and me. But when you begin to realize that the power of the community and the resolve for you to lean into the pressure and to lean into the storm and to do it afraid and to take control of what you can control. And so for me, when I wrote Change the World and I put it on the wall, I didn't know that I was going to become a communicator. I didn't know I was going to become an international speaker, and that would use the human English language to articulate messages that could captivate, motivate, inspire groups of people to maybe face their fears. I just wanted to make a difference. I shot a broad arrow and I said, this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I want to do. This is the steps that I'm going to start going towards. And when I began to take steps towards it, I just told a young lady a second ago, they asked me, how do I figure out my why? I want you to shoot a broad arrow, throw a big net, but then begin moving towards that. And it's almost like this sifting as you begin to do the next right thing and to treat people well. I always say it this way, hard work works. Make good choices, good things happen. There's never a wrong time to do what's right. Good choices and hard work will always create opportunities for you to win. And when you work as a collective whole, nothing can stop you. I just got word about your girls' basketball team that you guys are pretty phenomenal this year. And the truth is, I got word that it wasn't even because there's absolutely one superstar of superstars, that there's this collective whole of people that have began to really work as a team because we're better together. And so for me, in this place of when I started applying myself and doing the next right thing, and I boiled life down to this two choices. Should I or shouldn't I? Will this help or will this hurt? Will this bring it closer or push it farther away? And every choice that I would go through that lens, slowly the why became stronger, and the gift and the talent and the thing that I was passionate about began to surface. I threw a broad net, but then the actions of moving towards it began to refine it and define it. And now here I sit in 2022 as the most booked school communicator in the country, that even though COVID was here, the virtuals and all that, now here I sit living my life and my dream with the family and the people around me, facing my fears, and I'm passionate, and I found the thing that I love. And I didn't start this trajectory knowing that I was going to be a communicator. I started this trajectory knowing that I just wanted to go this way. I think I just made up a word, projectory. Projection, trajectory, they work together. The other day I made up another word, lunacy. It's the lunacy of believing in unity. But I believe we can work together in life. See, life, y'all, when COVID happened for me, I got to that place of which bucket am I going to pull from? Am I going to allow the pressure to bust the pipe, which was absolutely not trusting and letting fear rule the day? Or was I going to lean into uncomfortability and lock arms with the people around me and begin to say, I refuse to quit. I must, I can, I will. There is no plan B. I'm all gas, no brakes. Let's go. And even though that People get crazy like, Nathan, what do you mean there's no plan B? You got to have plan B and C. I understand the principle, but to me, I'm after plan A. I may shoot for the stars and I may not land on the star, but I'll land on the moon and I'm still in space. But hear me in wisdom. There's nothing wrong with being rational and having different ideas and thoughts. Putting hands on doors and seeing what's warm. I get it. But it doesn't change the trajectory of the commitment. And so for me in that space, it's why I was supposed to be in prison for 15 years, 2009, 15 to 2024. I was terrible at math, but I could do that one. But I've been out since 2013. Why? Because I believe the principles of transparency and accountability and hard work and good choices and valuing people will always create opportunities regardless of the storm around you. I got released 11 and a half years early because they started a program and they picked me because I was working on character and I was being present and I was absolutely committed to pursuing this thing. And so I got released to go speak in a few schools while in prison, and the governor of Indiana, his team, and they wrote a letter, this young man's more effective out there than he is in here. And I walked out of that prison 11 and a half years early. And so when COVID happened, I realized there was two buckets that I could draw from. You know, right after that I was with you guys, I went out to Colorado and I was speaking at the school. And they had this ladder backstage, and there was about 4,000 students, and they had bussed everybody in from all this different areas. And I think I was in Grand Junction on the west slope there of the Rockies. And I'm getting ready to walk on stage, and I'm like, hey, bring that ladder out. And they're like, well, Nate, what are you going to do with it? And I'm like, listen, I didn't ask you to ask me questions. I'm the communicator. I'm about to go. I don't know what I'm going to do with the ladder. I don't have memorized keynote messages or speeches. Everyone's different. I fill the room, I float, and I go. I'm all gas, no brakes. Let's do it. Bring the ladder out, please. And what I've learned about these ladders is this. They're just like you and me. And what I mean by that is everywhere I go, I ask for these ladders. And why they're like you and me is because, truthfully, they come in every different color. Green and red and blue and black and yellow and brown and white. I saw these step ladders just like this, these utility ladders, in every different color. They come literally in every different size. I saw 2-foot ones and 6-foot ones and 8-foot ones and 12-foot ones and 24-foot ones. They come in every different material, from fiberglass to steel, from wood to aluminum. They come from every different walk and abuse of life. Some of these ladders will stay on work trucks outside in the elements and be tore up and beat up by the weather and be covered in rust, and the wooden ones are rotting. And some of these will get covered in drywall and paint, like life has war on them. Others of them stay in our parents' garage, only come out once a year, and they're pristine and they're picture perfect in their looks because they get used once a year, because they only get used to clean the gutter. But no matter what the ladder looks like, no matter what the ladder's made of, no matter what the ladder's been through, the only way a ladder is really effective is that you have to climb it. And truthfully, for so long, I would try to climb every storm, every hurdle, and every battle on my own because I didn't trust any of you. Because I had determined I was never going to let anybody ever hurt me the way that my father had hurt me. On a side note, my dad, my relationship with him, when this family stepped into my story and picked love over hate, and they forgave me even though I didn't know them and it didn't make any natural, practical, or rational sense, but they just chose to lean into risk. I realized that if a family could forgive me for the loss of their daughter, which they absolutely did not have to, how could I continue to hold the bitterness and the anger towards my father? And I realized that the bitterness and the anger that I had towards my father wasn't hurting anybody else but me. Because I guarantee you, when my dad had been separated and was living his own life, he wasn't constantly 24/7 having me running through his head. So why was I allowing him to constantly 24/7 run through my head? And when the family forgave me, I began to realize about humanity and human nature, that if I could just slow down and pause and be self-aware and to zoom out. I always say, when in doubt, zoom out, so you can get a different perspective and a different angle and a different lens from the situation that you're looking at. And I began to realize that my dad had his own struggles, his own journey, his own war, his own battles. And that allowed me to have compassion for the things that had happened to me. You know, when it comes to conflict resolution, we would do so much better when we have disagreements with each other if we could slow down and zoom out and really to have ears of why people act, react, and treat us the way that they treat us. It doesn't justify it. It doesn't make it right, but it allows us to understand. But for me, I tried for so long just to climb this ladder on my own. And yep, I would stumble when I'd fall. And I didn't use the tools in the processes. And some of you are like, well, Nathan, listen, man, like I get it. Yeah, I get it. Ladders look a certain type of way. They're made a certain type of thing. They've been to their own little thing. And if you got to climb, like if this is your dream and your goals and your whys and the story of your life, like why do you need anybody? Like I got this on my own. I don't have to trust. I can do whatever I want to do, and I may make some mistakes and I may fall and I may stumble, but when it's all said and done, this isn't that big of a deal. I can navigate my storm. I can stand and overcome. Why do I need people? Because the truth, you may be able to maintain and to navigate this space, but around the corner, the next chapter, the next uncontrollable moment that you didn't ask for and you didn't sign up for, it comes knocking. And even though, yep, on certain areas of my life, I'm good, I'm cool, I can do this on my own. I don't need anybody else. But on certain areas and certain dreams and certain things that you're trying to achieve and become, and certain difficulties and life-altering challenges and storms and hurricanes that you're gonna have to face, you can try to climb it if you want to. But when you get to certain heights, no matter how good you are, it just isn't quite that stable. And so I've learned that pressure can bust pipes, but pressure can refine diamonds. And the processes and the tools that if I learn to develop now, they can translate to anything else in the future. See, the truth of the matter is, when COVID happened and that storm came blowing against my life, and I had 106 talks cancel in 72 hours. I'm talking of March of 20, March, April of May, the finishing of the school year of 2020. I had 106 talks scheduled to rip and to run. I had a team of 6 of us, staff, families that depended, things that were real, all of it shelved, all of it got knocked out. Everything, life was happening. But the truth is, it didn't really sway me because my why had been developed in a foundation that my anchor in my why was bigger than the storm. And when your why is bigger than the storm, nothing can move you. Yep, you may sway. Yep, there may be the elements that beat against you a little bit. Maybe you need to up anchor and move the boat a little bit farther, but you've got the anchor, you've got the tools, you've got the practices, you've got the method that no matter what's coming, you are weathered. You are weathered, you are Teflon, you can overcome it. And what I've learned about this is why it's so important for you and I to continue to be intentional and lean into our places of uncomfortability, but to use community, to understand that you can be in the room, but you're not present. That at the end of the day, life is more than just surface, what I can get in quick transactions and living. Life is about human connection. And the more that you can get into a place of using the people around you, you can begin to navigate any storm and any adversity. Now that takes you, though, having to face fears and challenges and being intentional of taking control of what you can control. But in my life, when I talk about transparency and accountability and hard work and good choices and valuing people, what it really comes down to is horizontal and vertical relationships. And what I mean by that is I need both of you to come here real quick. Come here real quick, both of you, up here. Watch this. See, I want one of you to hold the ladder right here, and I want one of you to hold the ladder right here. And when I began to live my life, and I began to realize at the end of the day, like my story, your story, it's the story, that I may be able to at certain times, and certain adversities and certain challenges, not need any of you. But I had to begin to have self-awareness and to kind of have the ability to kind of perceive life, knowing that hurdles and difficulties like 2021 and 2022, this won't be the biggest challenge that most of you ever face. There's going to be more hurdles, more difficulties, more life-altering decisions that you're going to have to make. But if you develop the tools that help you thrive and to be anchored now, no matter what storm comes against you, it won't move you. And so what I've learned about this, man, is this: the importance of horizontal relationships, peers, my friends, the people that I live life with, the ones that I've been able to lock arms with. Let me see your hand. The ones that I lock arms with, right? And at the end of the day, we may not always agree with each other. Maybe we've came to blows before on the field because we were competitive, or maybe at the end of the day, you've hurt me, I've hurt you, but we grew up together. And my life has saw consistently that I know when it's all said and done and the smoke and the mirrors are gone, you're for me. And I'm for you. And when I'm willing to lock my life with people that relate to each other, that understand each other, that I'm not just staying on the surface on transaction, but I'm willing to lock arms in community. And I'm willing to start climbing my ladder of the next hurdle, the next challenge, the next storm. And when things get rocky, my friends hold on tight because they have connection with me. And maybe I may make a mistake and my guy's gonna catch me. The importance of horizontal relationships, those people that relate to you, that are in your story. And I'm not telling you go ran and trust any random stranger, any Yahoo on this place. I'm talking the people that you know want to see you and believe in you beyond the surface, but genuinely they want to see you be successful. When you allow those people into your life, and you begin to climb, you're getting there. But the problem, my guy, even though I appreciate you and we relate to each other and we've been through things, eventually in my life there's going to be some hurdle, some challenge, some big life-altering moment that truthfully I appreciated your support, but I don't know how to deal with when so-and-so just got in that accident, or I don't know how to know and deal with one day when my mom is going to pass away because of life and people getting old, or I don't know how to deal with this next tragedy, or when this situation happened and there's a financial crisis, or I made a poor choice and I got into debt, or I made a poor business decision or a dealing life application. See, I can use you and appreciate you to anchor my life, but I also need vertical relationships, those mentors and those coaches and those people of influence that have been above and beyond me in age, that are seasoned, that can help navigate my storms. It's called mentors because truthfully, I've learned in my story, y'all, I don't need to recreate the wheel. But we struggle in this generation. We really do. I know I did, and I still sometimes do. But I know those people that can speak into my life. I need 2 adults, 2 staff, 2 teachers, 2 principals. I need somebody that's kind of a staff member, somebody to get it up here. My life depends upon it. Come on, come on, come on. My life depends upon it. Come on. I need one more. There we go, right there. Come on. Yeah. Yeah, come on, get on up here. Now watch. Right here, grab it. Right here, grab it. When I would have horizontal relationships, my peers, the people that I can lock arms to, that I can begin to allow to be intentional and invade my space, and I begin to trust not based on feelings, but based on the fact that I know we're for each other, and it calls me being vulnerable and intentional in facing the storms and the fears. And I begin to climb, and things get rocky, but I also have coaches and mentors and people that have been through life that can speak into my life, that want to see my floor, their ceiling. When I do life with community, horizontal and vertical relationships, no matter how big the ladder, how big the storm, yep, you're right. On your own, you can do it, some things on your own. You can navigate it, but you don't know what's knocking around the corner. I believe the last 2.5 years has proven that to many of us. And some of us had to face some real difficult life moments that we had developed tools of isolation well before the social distancing. That's why we got to have social connection, and we can keep some physical distancing. But when I lock arms with the ladders of my life, man, I can do And I can stand, and it may get rocky, and it may get shaky, but at the end of the day, no matter what it looks like, I can get to places in my life, and I can stand, and I can do things that I could never do on my own. I could not stand in this place if I didn't have these people locking on. And even though sometimes I may fall, when it's all said and done, when I surround myself with people, no obstacle, no storm. See, pressure can bust pipes. But if I allow that pressure to get involved in my life, when I surround myself with community, there's nothing that you and I can't achieve and overcome. Give them a round of applause. You guys can go sit down. So I say all that, y'all. So I say all that just to say, listen, I know your last couple of years have been difficult. It's affected all of you on different levels, different ways, different arenas. But for my seniors, you got a semester down. You're about there. My biggest mentor, he always told me, we end well so we can begin well. You didn't run this race your senior year just to hit the pause, the autopilot button to get to the end. And I know some of you guys begin to check out and think about college and the vocation school, what's next, starting businesses and careers and family. But that doesn't mean that you hit autopilot on intentionality and community. That doesn't mean you hit autopilot of the intentionality of the vulnerability of developing these deep, meaningful relationships. Knowing that inside of you is perseverance, it is resiliency, but it is activated by your ability to be vulnerable, to talk about it, communicate about it, because you can't and you're not supposed to do it on our own. We need each other. And so for me, every single day, my wife and my kids, my family, these are my people. It's my wife, Alexis, my son, Ashton, and my daughter, Juliana.